Hello YouTubers and fellow hams. Well, I'm at my quiet spot here in the desert, and I've been here about a week. Took a week off just to relax, enjoy the desert, and decompress a bit from all the activity of the past months. And I'm ready to start on my next antenna experiment. Emphasis on experiment. Okay, let's get that out of the way. So, what am I trying to build now? Well, I had this idea in my head for quite a while for a way to get a 160 meter half-wave antenna into a small footprint, like a small backyard. And I wanted to explore that idea because it's an odd geometry. We'll get to that in a little bit. But the steps leading up to it, I've built a lot of antennas using a 9-to-1 un-un end-fed wires. I've played around with counterpoise wires, chokes, all that kind of stuff over the last few years. And I've learned a bunch about how they behave, just sort of developed an instinct for it or a feel for it, you know. Most recently, just a few months ago, I had the Spiderbeam's 60-foot mast up, and I had a 60-foot piece of wire running up the side of it to play with. And I put a 9-to-1 on it, and I played around with counterpoise, and I got it to resonate just about perfectly as a quarter wave on the 80 meter band, and it performed exceedingly well. And then it also worked well on the upper frequency bands. As you moved up, I could tune it with a transmatch and get it to work, and it worked really well. So that really solidified for me how the 9-to-1 and a counterpoise wire, how they work, how they work together, and how to make a resonant antenna that way. Electrically, if you think about it, this is the way I think about it, you know, and there's probably some flaws with this theory, and it's just a theory. But if I pull this graphic up here, if you think about a 9-to-1 un-un with a counterpoise wire, it's kind of an off-center fed antenna system electrically. The counterpoise becoming the other leg, and the 9-to-1 is off-center fed down to about the point. You want it to around the point where the impedance comes up to around 450 ohms, so it translates that down to 50 ohms to match the coax in your radio. And it seems to work that way. You can get a quarter wave of wire up and get it to resonate on a band really easily. So that makes me want to create a 630 meter resonant antenna, because a quarter wave is probably doable, especially out here with the space that I have. A quarter wave on 360 meters, which is 474 kilohertz, is about the center of the band, is somewhere around 480 feet. I haven't done the math, or I did a while back, but I don't remember. But it's right around 480 feet. You know, somewhere between 470 and 500 feet is going to be a quarter wavelength on 630 meters. So the first part of this experiment is I'm going to try to make a resonant quarter wave end-fed wire antenna for 630 meters. And the idea is, there's another graphic, I'll run from my 9-to-1 at the corner of the RV up over the mast and then straight out across some of these little trees that are out here. Now out here in the desert, there's these washes where the rainwater drains away and creates these crevices, these washes. And since that's where the water ends up, that's where a lot of the vegetation grows. And we have a lot of these little trees that are 12 to 15 feet tall, which would be, 4 to 5 meters. So they're not very tall, but they're tall enough to keep a wire up off the ground and out of the way. And if I can find a spot where I've got about 500 feet of space where there's nothing else in the way, and I can run the wire across the trees, then I'll be able to get this antenna up and start playing with it. I've almost got a spot. I've walked around the area. Here's a picture of me where I'm parked, and it's a little deceptive. You see that great big open area behind me. What you don't see is around me there are a few RVs parked, and it seems like every place that I find a fairly straight run that I could run the wire, there's somebody camped halfway down that way. I'd have to go right across their camp. So I've been looking around these past few days trying to find a spot that I could move to where I'd have a better run. Can't find one. The place that I'm at, I kind of have a good potential possibility. I can run from the back of the RV up the mast and across. There's a tree on the other side of the wash, and then that wash following it down has trees along the edge of it, and there's nobody camped there. But right across from me, there's a guy camped, and he's right where that tree is. However, I've talked to them, and they said they're leaving this month. So probably in a week or two, they're going to leave, and then I'll be able to get the wire up. And so the next part of this video will be that antenna will be up. We'll sweep it and scan it. I'll talk about what I had to do to get it resonant on 630 meters. And then we'll look at sweeps of the other ham bands, and we'll see how it looks on those bands. I did very briefly, when I was down at Yuma, put the wire up. I was able to get it down to a tree, and then it had to go down into a wash. So half the antenna was actually below ground level down in the wash. So it was not ideal. And there were hiking trails there, and there was, I couldn't leave it up for very long. I could only have it up for just a very, very short time, about an hour or so, and then I had to go take it down because people are going to start walking on the trails and that, and it would be in their way. But I did sweep it, and I think I've still got that graphic that I can put up here. There were quite a few dips. If you look at the yellow swinging up and down there across the HF spectrum, there were quite a few dips to well below 1.5 to 1 SWR. And I think some of those are going to line up on the other ham bands once I get the antenna actually up and tuned. So what I'm curious to see is once I get it resonant on 630, how it looks on the other bands. So we'll look at that in depth. The other thing I want to do is make some contacts on 630 meters with a resonant antenna. You know, most of the guys that do 630, they have a compromise of some type. They'll have like a 160 meter inverted L with a massive loading coil, like a bucket variometer at the feed point. And it's a compromise antenna. You know, they're only radiating a very, very, very tiny fraction of the power they're putting into it. A resonant antenna, even a quarter wave resonant antenna, is going to do a lot better. Not as good as a half wave antenna, but a half wave antenna on 630 meters is darn near 1,000 feet. So that's even more of a logistical nightmare. So that's the plan, is to get that antenna up and get it resonant on 630. And then we can get to testing my original idea for getting a long antenna into a small space. You ready for this? It's kind of a crazy idea. I have no idea how it's going to behave. Here's a picture of what I'm thinking about. I don't know what I'd call it. Maybe the delta spiral, because it's in a delta shape and spirals up. But the idea is that in a relatively small space, you can extend that wire, spiraling it upwards with a fairly large gap between each turn, so that will reduce the inductive properties of that geometry, perhaps. It's just a theory, okay? It's just an idea, and I want to build it and see how it behaves. For that, I'll have to wait till I get to Kingman. But if this works, okay, if each one of these experiments works, if we can get a 630 meter quarter wave resonant end-fed wire, and it's usable on some of the other ham bands, maybe without a transmatch or tuner, that's a great thing. If I can build this beast and get a similarly behaving antenna into an area that's less than 60 square feet, this would be a construction that somebody might be able to put in a backyard. Can you imagine like being on a city lot and being able to put in your backyard an antenna that gets you on 630 through 10 meters? That would be kind of remarkable. I'm just really interested to see how it behaves. Of course, that's going to be a monster build. I'm going to have to probably get some conduit to make the masts cheaply. Going to have 3 30-foot masts. Well, I've got one with the push-up mast. And I could probably put the spider beams up again for another one. That would be quite a bit of work. And I've still got the MFJ mast. I think it still might go to 30 feet. I'll have to find out. So I'll come up with something. I'll figure it out. But I'm going to build this thing. I'm going to build it when I get up to Kingman, where I've got space and a little more resources, and see what it does and how it behaves. So that's the current antenna experiment. Emphasis on experiment. So that's what we're up to. Let's see, I've got about a month before I go to Kingman. So I'll get this and the long configuration across the trees done sometime here in the next couple of weeks. Watch for that. In the meantime, I guess I'll do something else. A viewer wanted me to do a video on explaining the band scope or waterfall on modern radios and how to identify signals visually. I think that's a good idea. I think I'll do that. And I might also do a repair. I've got an old Kenwood 2-meter mobile that somebody sent me that has some problems. So I'll probably get it out here on the bench and see if I can fix it up. And we'll talk a little bit about why I haven't been doing too many repair videos lately. So that's the big antenna experiment I'm starting on. And hopefully in the next video on it, we'll have the wire up and we'll make some contacts and see how it behaves on the air. With the capture area of such a long wire, I'm very interested to see how it behaves on the other bands as well. So we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Also, if you're not already a subscriber, click to subscribe. Join us on the Facebook channel for discussion about the videos. And if you'd like to help support this channel, please click to support me on my Patreon page.